shoes. Nice.
It's slightly early. I'm gonna get
Hot.
Joey's
So on one of the days that we were in Zion, we decided to hike the Narrows, and we went up. You ride a shuttle. It's the last shuttle stop. You ride up to stop number 9. So you start at the front gate. You get on a shuttle. You ride past all the stops. You go up to stop 9. And there's a couple of ways you can hike the Narrows. One is to do this. You walk up the Riverside Walk Trail. It's paved, and it gets you into the water. Round trip, the hike we did, we hiked up this trail. We went up walls, up all the way up the Narrows in the water, hiked up the Virgin River to Wall Street. And that's the hike that 90% of the people who do this hike, that's the one they do. So you can do, that's called a bottom-up hike, and that's what we chose to do. And then there's also people that's called a top-down hike. There's a couple of different ones that you can do there. You can turn this into an overnight hike, I believe. It can be a 12-hour hike if you do the whole thing from the bottom up. We ran into, we went during the summer, so we were there during July, which is a good time to do it, except for there was rain in the forecast, and as we're entering the trails, the park rangers were talking about imminent death and flash floods and everything else. So that was kind of freaking us out. Now, you hike up this Riverside Walk, which is a paved trail that pretty much anybody can hike up. Now, we were hoofing it on this section of the hike because we were excited to actually get into the water, which is just past this. See how this is cleared out? They said there was a rock slide from up there to down here. And let's just walk right under that. It's probably nothing. Anyway, I'm out of here. That's crazy. Now, after you hike about a little over a mile on the Riverside Walk Trail, it's fairly flat. You can see it kind of rolls up and down. You come to the end of that, and at that point you enter the Narrows River hike. So you step down and you get into the gateway to the Narrows. How far are you going, Miles?
All the way.
He's swimming upstream. And at this point is when you start needing equipment, and the equipment you need really depends on what time of the year you're hiking. There are times of the year where this hike is completely closed because there is so much water coming through this canyon that they don't let people in it. If you're there during the summer like we were, then the water drops down and it gets down to, most of the hike is ankle deep. There were times when we hit waist deep, which made it a little harder, but mainly, and the water's warm when we were there during the summer, so mainly we needed hiking shoes. So we had water boots, and then you can see we all had poles, and that's really all we needed. If you're there when the water's higher, you might want to wear waders, and usually if the water is higher, that means that the water is going to be colder because it's, melt, and you will definitely want waders to do the hike. We were there in the middle of July, so it was actually perfect. Now, that's all fine and good, except for we were there during July, and the problem with it is the canyon, it's a slot canyon, so you can have flash floods arise out of nowhere, and it's not even if it's raining in the area you're in. It could be raining miles away, and that water could come drain off into this canyon and create a flash flood. And we were warned many times by the park rangers about that, and it was scary. Deep. So this is where we lost Jane in Georgia, and it's also where I started to wet my pants a little bit about the flood, flash flood, because there's nowhere to go. Let's go. You can see, the walls are just straight up on this narrow slot canyon here. If a flash flood were to come, you'd be in a mess. There's nowhere to go. There's no high ground to get to. And that's what the rangers were basically telling everyone, that they were basically saying none of us would go on this hike today. But as you can see, there's tons of people doing the hike, and as long as you're careful, you should be fine. Now, once you get past that part, and that's actually the deepest part right there during that little canyon, you get to this area called Mystery Falls, and you can see there's a little waterfall that runs down the canyon wall there. When we came back in the afternoon, there were actually guys that were rappelling down that. And then you just kind of start walking. It's not deep anymore. It's back to being ankle deep. And you just start walking up the Virgin River, and you're going to walk for several hours until you get to what 90% of the hikers out here today are doing. Almost everyone who gets past that initial little deep part and into the water winds up hiking this hike that I'm time-lapsing here. And they go up to what's called Orderville Junction. It's a canyon where there's two kind of rivers kind of flowing together, and it's called Wall Street. So you're hiking this entire thing to get to Wall Street, and when you get there, the cliffs on both sides of you are about 1,500 feet high straight up, and it's 22 feet across. It is a 6-mile round trip hike, and you're basically in the Virgin River for 4 miles of it, and that's what I'm time-lapsing. So this time-lapse, what I'm doing here is I time-lapsed us walking up. I didn't do it back. And it's a 3 hour, little plus 3 hours, because it takes longer to go up than it does to come down. Crazy high. Just nuts. So like I said, it was a 6-hour round trip, and I kind of did Google Maps. So up here, so this is the Riverside Walk portion, which is all that paved path, and it is 1.1 miles, and it says it'll take 29 minutes to hike it one way. You can see the elevation. There's not a bunch of elevation changes in that at all. So very easy. I would say mostly handicap accessible. I mean, you could run a wheelchair up and down that easily. So it's paved, and like I said, we were moving through it fairly rapidly. We were not really sightseeing in that part of it because we knew that we would be in this where we're hiking right now. But I'll be honest, if all you could do is do the Riverside Walk, I mean, you're going to see incredible. At the end of this video, I took some pictures on the way back. And it's just it's breathtaking. And you're walking along the river up on a paved trail, and it's just a lot less endurance needed for it. And at this point, you hit a place, it's called the Narrows Alcove, and you can see it kind of is it's almost like a cave that's built into the turn there. So you can see it. I mean, it's pretty magnificent. It's where the water comes around and it just digs out that cave. And it's between some pretty tall cliffs there. It's very interesting. And kind of scary to walk underneath all that. So then I Google mapped the rest of the hike that's actually in the Virgin River that I'm time-lapsing right here. And this is about 1.6 miles. And it says, Google Maps says it'll take you 56 minutes to hike that. It takes a lot longer. Because you're literally, I mean, sometimes you're up on the bank like you are right here, and you can move pretty quick when you're walking on sand, but sometimes the bank is really bouldery like it is here, and it really slows you down. And then when you're down in the water, if the water's clear, it's fairly easy to navigate. If the water's not clear and you can't see the bottom, then you don't know what you're stepping on, and it really slows you down. And then you're also crisscross, like there's logs in the way, like right there. And then a lot of times you're crisscrossing the river. So you'll be on one side and you literally have to walk through the water just to get to the other side, to walk on the other side, because that's just where the path is. Like right here, you're having to cross. So a lot of it is just zigzagging back and forth. So it is not just a 1.6 mile straight hike. You are definitely moving slow. We stopped to eat lunch. We did indeed stop for lunch. We started pretty early in the morning, but we still, by this point, we were hungry. So we stopped before we proceeded, and the entire hike, so this is the Google map of the entire hike, from the shuttle drop off all the way up to the Orderville Canyon or the Orderville Gulch. The entire thing says it's 2.6 miles in. So that's what this time lapse is. It's from that until the Orderville at the end, and it's 2.6 miles. It takes about 10 minutes for the 3+ hour time lapse to run through. You're moving upstream, so it's slow. You're also gaining elevation as you go up. So I think the low, you start off at about 4,400 feet and wind up at a little over 5,000. So, I mean, you gain 600 feet of elevation along the way as well, which also makes it a little more complicated. Now, when you're coming back down, you can come back down not quite at, it takes about half the time to come back as it did going up. And I don't know why that is, but that's the way it is. I guess it's because the water's flowing with you and it just doesn't slow you down. Then here's where the hike gets really interesting. So this is a place called Grotto Alcove. So really deep, and our guys stripped down and they swam it and made Emily carry all their backpacks around the corner. It was very deep right there, and both ways we went through that. And then you get to this part, which is the Grotto Alcove, which is like that other alcove we just saw, but you can see much longer, and it runs way up the bank here. So that's like a little slot that comes way down. And I'm sure water gushes down through there. And this is where they were swimming through this little turn before. And then you get to what is called Wall Street. And this is, this hike is phenomenal. But when you hit this point in the hike, it is absolutely mind-blowing how crazy this area of the hike is. And Emily and I, we hiked it with my brother-in-law and his kids. And we had been to Bryce the day before and hiked in Bryce. And it was a toss-up for us as to whether Bryce was a better hike or this was. I think this one edged it out just because, it's phenomenal. You're looking up 1,500 feet. You're in the water. It's crazy. You can see. And then I'm going to quit the time lapse here and actually just kind of walk through this area, because this Orderville Junction piece is just, after you hike all that way, it is the perfect end to it, and then you turn around and come home. All right. Pretty crazy. What do you think, Max?
much further it goes?
It's not very far. You're at the junction. It's just right around this corner. Absolutely crazy hike. I mean, when you come up to Wall Street up here, like right here, when you're coming up to that, after that long hike, and you come around the corner and you see this, just insane. It's a lot faster going down too than it was going up. So we hiked all the way to the canyon where there's the junction between the two canyons. So you get right to the end of Wall Street, and that's where we stopped. Now we didn't go any further really because we're all kind of freaked out about flash floods, because it's a 40% chance of rain this afternoon, and we don't want to be hanging around during all that. So we're turning around and going back. And we're done. We're done with the river part. This is back onto the little trail. So we actually did good, because we're coming out to the shuttle and it's raining and thunder. So if we were gonna die, this would have been the time, and now we're done. So that's good. So this is my channel. I'm DeanoRolls. I like to go to national parks and I like to go on hikes. So I like to make videos about all that. So subscribe, hit like on this one if you liked it, and I'll try to do more.